I bought my parents a $425,000 seaside mansion, and my sister looked me dead in the eyes and said, "This is my house. Get out. Stay with me till the end, because what happened that day still feels like a bad dream I can't wake up from." Maybe you'll understand why family can hurt you in ways no stranger ever could. My name is Nia Caldwell. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in Houston, Texas. I wasn't born into money. My parents, Franklin and Lila, worked hard just to keep a roof over our heads. My dad fixed cars at a small auto shop, and my mom worked part-time at a grocery store. My younger sister, Danica, was always the star of the house, the funny one, the beautiful one, the one everyone adored. I loved her too. I really did. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the one who followed the rules and kept the peace. I studied late at night while Danica sneaked out to parties. Somehow, when things went wrong, I was the one helping to fix them. That's just who I was, the problem solver, the strong one. After college, life wasn't easy. I worked long hours in real estate, sometimes sleeping in my car between showings. But I kept going, dreaming of one day giving my parents something they could be proud of. When I finally made it, when the deals started coming in and I could finally breathe, I decided to do something special, something huge. I bought them a house. Not just any house, a $425,000 seaside mansion in Galveston. It had big windows that faced the ocean, a garden for my mom to plant her roses, and a deck where my dad could sit with his morning coffee. It was everything they deserved. When I handed them the keys, my mom cried and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. My dad said, "Nia, you've done more than we ever dreamed of." I felt proud, like every sacrifice, every sleepless night was finally worth it. But the happiness didn't last long. At the housewarming party, while everyone was laughing and enjoying the sea breeze, Danica pulled me aside. Her voice was cold. "You bought our family house," she said, crossing her arms. "So technically it's mine too. Get out." I froze. At first, I thought she was joking. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw something else. Envy, maybe even hate. My stomach twisted. My parents stood nearby, silent, not knowing what to say. I had dreamed of giving my family peace, but in that moment, I realized I had opened the door to something darker. That house, which was supposed to bring us together, had just become the place where everything started to fall apart. When I think back to our childhood, it's strange how clear everything seems now. Back then, I didn't see the patterns. I just thought that's how families were. One child shining bright, the other quietly holding things together in the background. Danica was the golden one. Everyone said it. Teachers loved her, neighbors adored her, and my parents, well, they couldn't stay mad at her even when she messed up badly. I remember once, she broke my mom's favorite vase, the one passed down from Grandma. I was the one who tried to glue the pieces back together, my hands shaking because I knew Mom would be upset. But when Mom came home, Danica cried those big fake tears and said, "I was trying to clean it for you, Mom." Suddenly, she was the victim, and I was the one scolded for not helping my sister. That was the rhythm of our lives. Danica made the mess, and I cleaned it up. When I was a teenager, I stopped expecting fairness. My dad always said, "Danica just feels things deeply, Nia. You're stronger." I used to take that as a compliment. I thought being strong meant staying quiet, forgiving easily, and pretending it didn't hurt when my sister took credit for things I did. When I got good grades, they clapped politely. When Danica barely passed a class, they threw a small party because she tried her best. By the time we were adults, those small moments had shaped who we became. I learned to survive through patience and hard work. Danica learned that charm could fix anything, that someone would always clean up behind her. I can't even count how many times she borrowed money from me, promising to pay it back next month. I never saw a dime, but I told myself that's what family does. We help each other. I thought maybe adulthood would change her. When she got her first job, I was genuinely proud. I even helped her write her resume. But soon she quit, saying her boss didn't appreciate her energy. My parents didn't say a word. They just told her to take her time figuring things out. I watched quietly, swallowing the same frustration I'd carried since childhood. Still, through everything, I believed loyalty was more important than fairness. I thought as long as we stayed close, as long as I kept giving, love would keep us whole. I never imagined that loyalty could be one-sided. It wasn't until years later, when Danica's greed finally showed its teeth, that I realized how blind I'd been. The signs were always there, in the way she took without guilt, in the way my parents always made excuses for her. I used to think she saw me as her sister. Now I understand. She saw me as her safety net. And the day she decided she didn't need me anymore, she cut that net without a second thought. Buying that seaside mansion was one of the proudest moments of my life. I had worked for years, saving every extra dollar, skipping vacations, and putting off luxuries so I could one day do something meaningful for my parents. They had given me everything they could: love, support, encouragement, and I wanted to give them peace. A real home where they could rest, grow old together, and feel the reward of their sacrifices. I started looking quietly, without telling anyone. Every weekend, I drove out to Galveston, walking through listings, talking to agents, and studying the sound of the ocean. I wanted a house that felt alive, not just beautiful. When I finally found it, a cream-colored seaside mansion with wide glass windows, a garden full of sunlight, and a soft wind that carried the smell of salt and freedom, I knew. This was it. This was home. The paperwork took months. I handled every signature, every inspection, every closing call by myself. The day I got the keys, I cried alone in my car. Not because of the money, but because I finally felt like I'd done something worthy. Something that mattered. When I told my parents, my mom's hand flew to her mouth. My dad went silent for a few seconds before saying, "You did this for us?" I nodded, and he just hugged me. It was the kind of hug that said everything words couldn't. We planned a small move-in celebration. Family, neighbors, a few close friends. Everyone admired the view, the open kitchen, the balcony that looked like a painting. My mom wandered through the rooms, smiling like a child, already talking about where her plants would go. My dad joked about building a little workshop by the back fence. For a moment, it felt perfect, like all the years of struggle were worth it. But then there was Danica. At first, she seemed happy, complimenting every room and taking endless photos. But soon her tone shifted. She began calling it our house, and telling guests how she'll make sure everything stays nice. She even joked that she should have the master bedroom since she'd be helping Mom out. I laughed it off, thinking it was just her usual attitude. A week later, I went to the mailbox and found nothing. That felt odd because I'd set the deed's mailing address to my apartment in Houston. I checked with the real estate office. They said the new mailing address had been changed to one belonging to Danica Caldwell. My chest tightened. I hadn't approved any change. That was the first time I felt a cold wave of unease wash over me. The house that was meant to bring my family peace suddenly felt like a battlefield I didn't sign up for. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. But deep down I knew something was breaking, and this time love alone wouldn't fix it. It started with a phone call from my mother. Her voice sounded uneasy, the kind of tone that told me something was wrong, even before she said the words. "Danica brought some papers for us to sign," she said softly. She said it was just about house responsibilities, bills and maintenance. My stomach dropped. Papers? What kind of papers? I asked her to send me a photo, and when I saw it, my heart stopped. It was a document titled Household Responsibility Agreement. The language looked professional but sneaky. It gave Danica the right to manage all aspects of the property, including access, expenses, and maintenance. In plain terms, she had control, not ownership, but enough power to make decisions without me. I couldn't believe it. My parents had signed it, thinking it was just something to help them stay organized. I knew my dad's eyesight wasn't great anymore, and my mom trusted Danica far too easily. It felt like watching a slow-motion car crash, one that I couldn't stop because I hadn't seen it coming. When I called Danica, she acted innocent at first. "Oh, come on, Nia," she said, laughing. "It's just paperwork. You're too uptight about these things." I pressed harder, asking why she hadn't told me. That's when her tone changed. She became defensive, almost smug. "You don't even live here," she said. "I'm the one taking care of Mom and Dad. Someone has to be in charge." Her words hit me like ice. "In charge?" I repeated. "Danica, this is my gift to them, not your project to manage." But she just rolled her eyes. A few days later, I drove to Galveston to talk to my parents in person. When I tried to explain what the document really meant, Danica walked in midway, fake tears streaming down her face. "You see," she cried. "She's trying to kick me out. She doesn't want me here because she's jealous that I actually help." My parents froze. My mother looked torn, my father confused. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy, like all the air had been sucked out. My dad said quietly, "Nia, your sister only wanted to help." That was the moment I realized Danica had planned this. Every word, every action. She had been building her version of the story long before I even knew what was happening. I tried to defend myself, but nothing I said mattered. Danica clung to our mother, still crying, whispering that I wanted to control everything. It was manipulation at its finest, and it worked. My parents pulled away from me without even realizing it. Driving back that night, the ocean looked darker than usual. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the house lights in the distance. That house had started as a dream, my way of saying thank you. But now, it felt like I'd built the perfect stage for my sister's betrayal. The night everything broke is still burned into my memory like a scar I can't erase. I had driven down to Galveston after work to pick up a folder I left in the study, documents from the property insurance that I needed for my accountant. It was supposed to be a quick visit, in and out, no drama. The sky was cloudy, and the wind smelled of salt and rain. I remember thinking it felt heavier than usual, like the world already knew something I didn't. When I pulled up to the mansion, the lights were on, but the front gate didn't open with my code. I tried again. Nothing. My chest tightened. Maybe it was a system glitch, I thought. I parked outside, walked up to the door, and pressed the bell. A few moments later, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. The door opened, and there she was. Danica, standing there in a silk robe, holding a wine glass like she owned the place. She leaned against the doorframe with that smug little smile I used to mistake for charm. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone dripping with irritation. "I came to get some documents," I said calmly. "Why doesn't my code work?" She took a sip of her drink and said, "Because you don't live here anymore." I froze. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," she said, crossing her arms. "This is my house now. You can't just walk in whenever you feel like it." Behind her, I saw my mother standing near the hallway. Her face looked pale, eyes darting between us. "Mom," I said, taking a step forward. "Please tell me she's joking." But my mother didn't say a word. She just looked down, wringing her hands. That silence hurt more than anything Danica could ever say. I felt my throat tighten. "I bought this house for you and Dad," I said. "How could you?" Danica cut me off, her voice rising. "No, you bought it for yourself. For attention. You wanted everyone to think you're some kind of hero. Well, guess what, Nia? You're not." Her words hit hard, and the anger I'd been holding back for months finally cracked. "I worked for this," I shouted. "Every brick, every inch of this place came from my blood and sweat. And you turned it into a playground for your lies." The room filled with shouting, her blaming me for trying to control the family, me demanding answers, and my mother crying quietly in the background. It was chaos, the kind that leaves you empty afterward. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned around and walked out, the sound of Danica's voice echoing behind me. When I reached my car, I just sat there, staring at the mansion through tears. That was the moment I truly understood. You can buy a house, but you can't buy peace. And sometimes family can feel like the coldest strangers of all. After that night, I didn't know where to go. I couldn't face the mansion, not with Danica walking through the halls like she belonged there. I ended up at Taryn's apartment, my friend who had always been my rock through college, bad relationships, and long nights at work. Taryn, a nurse with endless patience and warmth, wrapped me in a hug the second I stepped through her door. "You don't have to deal with this alone, Nia," she said softly, and for the first time in days, I let myself breathe. We spent hours talking. I told her everything, the deed, the agreement, Danica's manipulation. Taryn listened without interruption, her eyes steady, and when I finally stopped, she said, "You need to protect yourself and your parents. You can't let her walk all over you." The next day, she connected me with Marcus Evers, a family property lawyer she trusted. Marcus went through the documents with me carefully, explaining every line, every loophole. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Legally, Nia, unless the deed was officially transferred or signed over, you still own the house. What she's doing is fraud, and you have the right to stop it." I felt a flicker of hope, but it was mixed with guilt. I didn't want to drag my parents into a messy legal battle. They were already confused and torn between us, and the thought of putting them through months of court hearings made my chest tighten. I wanted justice, but I also wanted to protect them. Taryn watched me struggle and didn't offer cliches. She just said, "You can fight without hurting them. You have to figure out what's right for you, too." I spent the evening pacing, looking at my hands, thinking about all the sacrifices my parents made for me. I remembered my mom working 2 jobs while my dad fixed cars late into the night. I remembered the nights I stayed up studying while Danica slept soundly, knowing my parents relied on me to keep everything together. And then I thought about Danica, about her lies, her betrayal, the way she tried to take control of everything I worked for. Part of me wanted to scream, to take her to court, to show her that I wouldn't be pushed aside. Another part of me wanted to forgive, to tell myself it didn't matter, that family should come first. I realized I was standing at a crossroads, caught between anger and love. I wanted to protect my parents, but I couldn't ignore what had happened. I wanted to fight Danica, but I didn't want to become someone she could use against them. The more I thought about it, the more I understood that picking up the pieces wouldn't just be about the house. It would be about me, my choices, and how I allowed myself to be treated. That night, Taryn stayed up with me, letting me talk, cry, and plan. By the time the sun came up, I knew I had to make a decision soon. I couldn't stay frozen in fear or guilt. I had to find a way to protect my family without losing myself in the process. I sat at Marcus's office, staring at the documents spread across his desk, feeling like the floor had fallen out from under me. Marcus leaned back in his chair, brows furrowed, and finally said the words I wasn't ready to hear. "Nia, your sister forged your mother's signature on this amendment request. This isn't just a family spat, this is fraud." I blinked, unable to breathe for a moment. Forged? My mother's signature? My hands shook as I traced the lines on the page. Every detail matched, every loop of the letters mimicking Mom's handwriting perfectly. Too perfectly. Danica had done this deliberately, carefully, planning it all. It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was a crime. Marcus continued. Because of this, your parents' credit and financial reputation are at risk. If this goes unnoticed, it could have serious legal and financial consequences for them. Danica could be held accountable, and you have the right to intervene. I felt my stomach twist. I had thought of Danica as my little sister, the golden child, the charming troublemaker I had protected and excused for years. But this was something I couldn't ignore. She hadn't just taken advantage of me emotionally. She had crossed a line that could ruin our parents. My hands tightened into fists. I wanted to scream, to confront her immediately, to shake her and demand why she would risk everything for herself. But the rational part of me knew it wasn't that simple. Exposing her would bring shame, anger, and tension I wasn't sure my family could survive. My parents, already torn between us, would be devastated to learn their daughter had committed fraud against them. Marcus leaned forward, seeing my hesitation. You need to decide what's more important, protecting your family or staying silent to avoid conflict. But know this, silence could make you complicit, and it could allow Danica to continue harming them. I ran my hands through my hair and closed my eyes. Memories of my parents flashed in my mind. My mom's gentle hands, my dad's quiet sacrifices, all the years they had worked and worried to give us a stable life. Could I bear to watch them suffer because I chose to protect Danica's image? And yet, the thought of confronting her terrified me. What if it split the family even further? What if she turned it against me, blaming me as she always had, leaving my parents caught in the middle? I opened my eyes and felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me like a storm I couldn't escape. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about trust, betrayal, and doing what was right when doing what was easy would feel safer. I left Marcus's office that evening feeling drained, the documents clutched tightly in my hands. Every step I took back to my car felt heavier than the last. Danica's betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was criminal. And now, I had to choose whether to confront her and save my parents or stay silent and risk everything I cared about. The weight of it pressed into my chest, and I realized that some truths, no matter how painful, demand action. I spent the entire day preparing for that dinner, my hands trembling as I set the table. It wasn't fancy, just my parents, the food they loved, and a quiet hope that maybe, finally, truth could cut through the chaos. I had the documents organized in a folder, each page carefully labeled. The household agreement, the forged amendment, the property records showing the address change. I wanted this to be calm, factual, and clear. No yelling, no drama, just the truth laid bare. When my parents arrived, their smiles were hesitant. They had no idea what was coming, only that I had asked them over urgently. My mother fussed over the plates, glancing at me nervously. My father gave me a small nod of reassurance. I took a deep breath and began. I explained the deed, the household responsibility agreement, and how Danica had manipulated them into signing it. I showed them the amendment with Mom's forged signature. I stayed steady, letting each fact speak for itself. Midway through, the door slammed open. Danica stormed in, her face red, her hands shaking. "What's going on here?" she demanded, voice sharp and accusing. She glared at me, then at our parents. "Why are you all listening to her nonsense?" I stayed seated, calm, and laid out every document in front of her. "This isn't nonsense, Danica. This is the truth. Every lie, every manipulation, every forged signature, it's all here." Her fury erupted like fire. "You're lying. This is your way of trying to control everything. Mom, Dad, she's trying to ruin me." She pointed at me, her words a jagged assault. My parents looked between us, their confusion deepening. My mother's hand shook, resting over her mouth, unable to speak. My father finally raised his voice, firm and steady. "Danica, this isn't love. This is theft." The words hit her like a punch. For a moment she froze, her chest heaving. Then the tears came, but there was no apology, no explanation, just the weight of what she had done crashing down. She sank into the chair, sobbing, realizing the truth she had tried so hard to hide. I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that my parents could finally see the manipulation for what it was, but sorrow for the sister I had loved and trusted, who had chosen greed over family. The dinner, meant to bring warmth and connection, had become the stage for a painful unveiling of betrayal. I stood slowly, gathering the folder and my composure. I looked at my parents. Their eyes were filled with sadness, but also understanding. I realized then that some battles aren't won with anger or revenge, but with clarity and courage. I walked out of that room knowing that love sometimes means letting go. Letting go of the person who refuses to change, who chooses selfishness over family. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel joyful. I felt free, free from the weight of secrets, lies, and the expectations that had kept me silent for too long. That night, as I stepped out into the cool evening air, I knew the confrontation had changed everything. The family I had imagined may never be whole again, but at least the truth had a voice, and I had reclaimed mine. After the confrontation, I knew I couldn't leave things unresolved. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting my parents and the home I had worked so hard to give them. With Marcus guiding me, we filed the necessary legal documents to secure the deed under my name and remove Danica's access. Every step felt heavy, like I was walking through quicksand, but I kept going because I couldn't allow her actions to endanger my parents' future. The court process was draining. Danica hired her own lawyer and tried to argue that she had been helping manage the house, claiming the documents were misunderstood. But the forged signature and the evidence of her manipulations were undeniable. Watching her defend herself so boldly, knowing what she had done, made my stomach churn. It was surreal. Someone I grew up with, my own sister, standing there trying to justify theft as care. Finally, the judge ruled in our favor. Danica was ordered to vacate the house immediately, and the deed was restored entirely in my name. My heart felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Justice had been served, but it didn't feel like victory. The silence between us was deafening. We hadn't spoken since the confrontation, and now it was permanent. She didn't reach out, and I didn't try to. The sister I knew, or thought I knew, was gone, replaced by someone I could no longer trust. My parents moved into the mansion quietly. They didn't throw a party or invite friends. The weight of the events hung heavily in the air. I could see their regret in little things. My dad sighing as he unpacked the last boxes, my mom lingering over the kitchen counter, remembering moments when she wished she had questioned Danica more. I understood that regret all too well. Love and loyalty had blinded them, just as it had once blinded me. The house itself, once a symbol of hope and gratitude, now felt different. The laughter, the warmth, the pride, it had faded. Every room carried memories of betrayal, manipulation, and heartbreak. I visited less often, unable to reconcile the image of the home I had dreamed of with the reality it had become. It was still beautiful, still perfect in design, but it no longer held the same magic. I realized that protecting my parents meant keeping my distance. It wasn't about punishment or proving a point. It was about ensuring they were safe and that Danica could no longer hurt them financially or emotionally. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't feel good. Sometimes it's quiet and lonely and leaves scars that take years to fade. I learned that justice isn't always satisfying in the way you imagine. It doesn't erase the pain or rebuild trust. It simply draws a line and says, "This is where it ends." And for my parents, and for me, that line was necessary, even if it meant walking away from the sister I once loved. The mansion still stands by the sea, solid and enduring, just like the life I've worked to protect. but the warmth I envisioned? That had to come from somewhere else now, from the lessons learned and the strength I'd found within myself. Months had passed since the court ruling, and the storm of confrontation had settled into a heavy, quiet calm. I drove down to Galveston again, the same road that had once felt full of hope and now carried a mix of memories, some sweet, some painful. The air smelled of salt and seaweed, familiar and grounding, as if the ocean itself had been waiting for me to return. When I stepped out of the car, my parents were already on the porch, waiting. My mother's face lit up with a smile, tired but genuine, and she came forward, wrapping me in a hug that made my chest ache with emotion. "You did the right thing," she whispered against my shoulder, her voice trembling. Even when it hurt, I felt tears sting my eyes, the weight of the past months pressing against the relief of this moment. Inside the house, everything was quiet. My parents had settled in slowly, unpacking only the essentials, leaving room for reflection rather than excess. My father showed me the little touches he had added. A chair by the window where he could watch the sunrise, a small bench by the garden where Mom could plant her flowers. The house was alive again, but in a gentle, subdued way. It no longer carried the tension and fear that Danica's presence had brought. I wandered through the rooms, running my fingers along the banister, noticing how the sunlight streamed through the windows, painting patterns on the hardwood floor. Every corner held memories, some from before the betrayal, some from the confrontation, some from the lonely nights of figuring out how to protect my family. I stopped at Danica's old room. The space was empty now, stripped of her belongings. I leaned against the doorway, letting a quiet sigh escape. "I hope you find peace," I whispered softly, knowing she might never hear it. Then I stepped outside onto the deck that overlooked the ocean. The water stretched endlessly before me, vast and calm, a mirror to the kind of closure I had been searching for. I watched the waves roll in rhythmically, the sound steady and soothing, and I felt a strange lightness I hadn't known in months. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they were still there, but they no longer defined me. For the first time since this all began, I felt a sense of completion. I sat down in the chair my father had placed by the railing and breathed in the salty air, letting it fill me with clarity. I realized that this story, my story, wasn't about revenge. It was about surviving, learning, and growing stronger through pain. I had loved, been hurt, and learned to protect without losing myself. As the sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I felt a quiet satisfaction. I had stood my ground, preserved my parents' legacy, and found peace within myself. Life had shown me that growth often comes not from triumphs or victories, but from surviving betrayal, making hard choices, and learning to let go. I left the mansion that evening with a heart a little lighter, carrying the lessons with me. A reminder that even in the face of family betrayal, love, patience, and resilience could still endure. Do you think Nia made the right choice by stepping back from her sister and protecting her parents? Or should she have tried to mend things with Danica? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear what you think. And if stories like this resonate with you, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new one.